Hello, and welcome to a special edition of Up Close on METV. I'm Charles Clapsaddle, station manager for Manatee Educational Television. It's often been said that the true full measure of a man is not only in the scope of his accomplishments, but on the quality of his character. For example, take a state trooper who at a very young age and at great personal sacrifice puts himself in harm's way for almost 3 years as an undercover operative to break up an organized crime ring. That is truly a measure of character. What about an individual who rises to the highest echelons of professional sports and whose 20-plus year reputation for dedication, decisiveness, and above all else, fairness, earns him the respect and admiration of athletes and fans nationwide? That is a measure of character. Then there is an individual who travels to war zones in Iraq and Afghanistan and military bases nationwide to meet with troops not only to build morale, but to add support and advocacy for a better understanding of the serious issue of post-traumatic stress. That is a measure of character. What if there was an individual who, as an author and speaker, is motivated to share his knowledge and vision for the purpose of shaping lives? Now, if any one of these accomplishments could be achieved by just one individual, it would be noteworthy and significant. However, if all of these achievements could be accomplished by one person, it would be extraordinary. Please welcome that extraordinary individual, Bob Delaney. Bob, thank you so much for joining us on this edition of Up Close. We've been trying to get you in here. You're a very busy man, and we can't tell you what a privilege it is to have you with us today.
It's an honor to be here.
Now, Bob, it's a great story, and there's a lot of information that we want everyone to know about. But first of all, tell us a little bit about your early years, where you came from, where you started, a little bit about your family.
Yeah, I grew up in Paterson, New Jersey, the son of Mary and Bob Delaney. And my dad was a state trooper in New Jersey, followed in my father's footsteps and joined the New Jersey State Police in 1973. But early on, just a family of my sister and myself, truly raised by a village. My grandparents had a tremendous influence, as well as my aunts and uncles. So kind of a leave it to beaver kind of life. Yeah. Whenever we were at holidays, it was the entire family together every Sunday at my grandparents'. So a real traditional Americana.
So that kind of shaped you a lot, that kind of, family and all-American upbringing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I look back and you realize how much of an influence. My grandfather was the kind of guy who every night would look through the obituaries and see if he knew anyone that passed away in town or even closely knew them, and would go there. And it was like he drilled in me early on that you're there for people when they're going through tough times. It's easy to be there for the weddings. It's easy to be there for the birthday parties. But it's for the funerals that you better make sure you're there so that they know they have support.
Well, that's not only something that you've kind of carried through in all aspects of the many careers that you've had, but it's also kind of a driving force into what you're doing now. And, tell us a little bit about your involvement briefly, because we want to go into it in great detail later, about how you're working with, we've been working with police and firefighter for many, many years, but you're kind of focused on working with troops right now. Tell us briefly about that.
Yeah, for the past 30 years I've been working with law enforcement, firefighters, first responders, in speaking about the area of post-traumatic stress. We didn't even know it was post-traumatic stress back then when I first started speaking about it. We was talking about the emotional side of those kinds of experiences that you have as a police officer. And then about 7 years ago, the military heard me speaking at a Homeland Security conference in San Diego, and there were military members attending, and they came up and asked if I would be available to speak to the troops. And once I started, I've been doing it ever since. And we want to go into
a little detail about it, but in 2009 you took your first visit to Iraq.
Yes.
And it's an eye-opener, isn't it?
Yeah, a tremendous experience. I was all excited about going because I'm from that generation of Vietnam. Back then, we of that generation remember that we by the bounce of a ping pong ball, it was decided whether or not you're going to be drafted. My number came up 326. I was in college. I wasn't going. It was the second half of the war. I didn't go, but I had friends that went. So I was always intrigued by the military, even though I never served. And you know, when this opportunity came and they asked me to go over to Iraq, I was excited. I felt like I was Bob Hope. You know, I was going over to visit the troops, and then very quickly on that flight over to Kuwait, it changed. The reality of the war zone that you're going into, and then when I land there and I'm in Camp Arvajan in the middle of the Kuwait desert, and the next morning go to Ali Salim where we're going to get on a C-130 and go into Mosul, that entire experience was absolutely amazing. And to be around the men and women who serve us was the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my life.
Well, one of the quotes that, you know, the many people that have not only admired and respected your visit was from General Brown and troops, and he said that you had the best interaction with all of his troops than anybody else who had ever come to visit.
Tremendous compliment, but I also know that I have this story of my undercover life, and I have the 25 years in the NBA. Combining those two stories allows me to get a rapport with those who serve us. And then from there, we start talking about post-traumatic stress.
Well, and that's what we want to talk a little bit about and kind of take you through a few things. Want to share this picture with everyone. That's your dad.
That is my dad. He retired a captain, Captain Robert David Delaney. We go by, while I have the same name, mine is Robert James Delaney. And the reason we had to change that was because my first check came and I was getting captain's pay. So the state police had to figure out a way to differentiate us.
Between the two.
I thought this was a pretty good gig.
And you thought, well, that's how I want to go on with that. And your dad retired from the...
from the state police, yeah.
Now this is a great photo, and I want to show this for a moment. This is when you're graduating and you're receiving your badge.
That's 1973, graduating from the State Police Academy in Seagirt, New Jersey. My dad is in the center, presenting me with my badge. To his left is Colonel David B. Kelly, who was the commanding colonel of the New Jersey State Police at the time, and then it's Lieutenant Colonel Gene Olaf to his right.
It had to be a proud moment for him as well as for you to receive your badge.
I think you can see it in his face. You can see, you know, I'm still in that military pose, and you know, I've already had all that military bearing drilled into me for the 23 weeks of training, so I'm not moving. But you can see it in his face.
Well, you know, as a young state policeman, you know, how old were you when you were here?
I was 21 when I graduated from the academy.
Well, this next shot is when you were in college, and you've got a great jump shot going on here.
Yeah, I used to be able to get off the ground pretty good. Today, I would have what the players call a credit card jump shot. I only jumped high enough to slide a credit card underneath. You know, back then, basketball was a big part of my life. It was from the time that I started in high school, playing the game, and all through my college career. And basketball also served me well later in life.
And we're going to get into that, but I want to share a few of these with you because here you are with some of your a coach, I think, and one of your teachers.
Yeah, that's Bob Delaney was my high school basketball coach, and Father Kowalski was the principal of the school that I went to, Newman Prep, an all-boys Catholic high school in Wayne, New Jersey, just outside of Paterson, New Jersey. And I'm getting my 1,000. I scored 1,000 points in 2 years of high school basketball.
That's pretty impressive. And of course, uniforms have changed there, haven't they, Bob?
Those are short shorts.
Now, I don't want to share this one last picture here as well. And this is your state police uniform.
Right. Yeah, that's after having surfaced from the undercover job. Interesting part about our uniform, Colonel H. Norman Schwarzkopf founded the New Jersey State Police.
And this is a wonderful story.
And his father is, he is the father of General H. Norman Schwarzkopf. And so that's where you see the German stormtrooper type uniform that we're wearing. He had a tremendous influence of West Point brought into New Jersey State Police. Our badges are worn on the hat, so you see a hat badge, and my number was 2853. That means I was a 2,852nd person to become a New Jersey State Trooper because badge number 1921, the year it was founded, was never given out.
Really?
My father was 978. He was the 978th person to become a New Jersey State Trooper.
How impressive is that? And I believe General Schwarzkopf, in your book, in Covert, General Schwarzkopf has a blurb in there, doesn't he?
Yeah, he has a blurb, and it was powerful when it was received and humbling because he said that his father would have been proud of me.
Well, I want to talk a little bit. As a young man, you were 21 when you graduated from the State Police Academy.
Yeah.
And when you were a young man, as a state policeman, you have your very specific duties. You're a lot of things that have to do with roads and everything. But you were approached by your superiors, and they said, "Bob, we want to talk to you about an assignment." And how old were you when they came to you?
I was 22 years old. I had a year on the job, and in the state police, as a general road duty trooper, you were assigned to a station. We lived at the station for 2 days on and 2 days off, so it was a interesting lifestyle. We had, every state police station was the same. You would have a police station on the main level. Downstairs was a kitchen area, a family area, a ping pong table. Upstairs were where the troopers lived, 2 troopers to every room. So I got a call from Division Headquarters, Lieutenant Jack Liddy, Division Headquarters, Criminal Investigation Section, Organized Crime Bureau. This guy had more titles next to his name, and it's not normal for a general road duty trooper to get that kind of notice to call down there. And I grew up Irish Catholic. That means I wake up guilty in the morning. So I thought I did something wrong. I thought I had a problem on
and
my
all
hands.
of a sudden, you're getting a call from the very top echelon of the thing, and they call you into the office and they sit you down, and I'm sure it's a very serious meeting with a lot of things, and they say, "Bob, Trooper Delaney, we have an assignment for you."
Yeah, it went a little bit different. Jack walked into the state police station and said to me, "Kid, you're going to be in for a while in Somerville." And I met him down in that kitchen area, and he said to me, "Are you interested in doing undercover work?" I said, "Yes, sir." He turned around and walked away. That was the extent of the first meeting. I said, "Lieutenant, what are you talking about, drugs?" Because back then, that's all we were doing was buy, bust on the street, narcotics. And he said, "You keep asking questions, you're going to be out of the running." And over a period of 3 weeks, we had other meetings, and I came to learn that the President's Organized Crime Task Force, the FBI, and New Jersey State Police were going to join forces and start a trucking company on the waterfront in New Jersey, and I was selected to be one of those undercover agents.
Now, you're a big, strong, strapping young man, and they set you up with the FBI. They set you up as a company.
Yeah, we did. We started our first trucking company with 5 undercover agents, and it was 2 New Jersey State Troopers and 3 FBI agents. And it was called Mid-Atlantic Air Sea Transportation. It was at the 941 Fairmount Avenue in Elizabeth, New Jersey, right at the entrance to the Port of Newark. And one of the problems we had was that the grant was written for 6 months. I guess we had an aggressive mindset. We were going to end organized crime in the state of New Jersey in 6 months and move on. And very quickly we realized that wasn't going to happen. And this smaller trucking company, we had 5 co-owners. All 5 of us, we were being politically correct. The 3 FBI agents and the 2 state troopers were all owners of this company. We had to learn the way of the wise guy. We had to learn the way of the trucking companies. We had to learn all this, and it took a period of time. We got lucky in the investigation. A guy by the name of Pat Kelly was a consigliere for the DiNorzio crew, the Bruno crime family, was jammed up. He was going to jail. FBI had cases on him. New Jersey State Police had cases on him.
So he cooperated with you.
He's the one that scalded us. We then started a second trucking company called Alamo Transportation. And when we started Alamo Transportation, that's when Pat scalded us in the way of the wise guy. And he said, "I've never seen a truck or a bus going down the street with 5 bus drivers. Somebody's got to be the boss." And it was determined that I would become the president of the trucking company. Pat would be the vice president. The other trooper, Ralph Bono, would play the role of my bodyguard and driver. And the other FBI agents that were involved took on the roles of truck manager and accountants and salespeople.
And when you were working during this time, you have to kind of take on a little bit of a persona, a little bit of that undercover. You got to get that flavor of it. And this is, let's take a look at this. This is you in your offices?
Yeah, that was the office of Alamo Transportation, and it was right in the shadows of the Statue of Liberty, Liberty State Park. And that Pat and I shared the main office, and I was the president, so I was the man. And but you know, when I first went undercover, I was like most cops that go undercover. I became an armpit with eyes. I had hair growing everywhere. You know, you go from that military bearing to, and I learned very quickly that a lot of the mob guys and the people that I were around didn't wear beards. So you can see that I went to a Fu Manchu, and my hair was kind of like froed out a little bit and gave a certain appearance. But that was at the trucking company. At night, we'd get into a little different kind of dress code with the open collar shirts and the chains around the neck and the pinky rings, and go out and be part of that subculture.
And it's kind of what I would think it's got to be kind of a learning curve, because you got to develop a relationship
Yeah,
with the people
actually,
that you're dealing with. I mean, it's not just it might become like an association, but you got to talk the talk. You got to like be part of that culture.
Yeah, basic human psychology is we like to be around people who are like us. So we're infiltrating a subculture. We've got to learn what that subculture is, how they dress, how they speak, how they think. All of those things take time. So there is a process that takes place here, and understanding how a mob guy thinks.
And that was an important part of it, you know, to be able to find out more about their operation. You've got to get into their mindset. Now, this is a great photo here. We're going to talk a little bit about this from the Daily News. This is a great shot of you. You look very detective looking here. And this is all part of the Mid-Atlantic sting and what you were doing.
Right.
But, you know, the important part, and I really need for you to kind of take me through it, is that the longer that you stay in, and the closer that you get to these people, there's a relationship that develops.
Yeah, the story that you saw up there from the Daily News, Neil Hirschfield, was one of the first stories that was done on my experience, and in depth, from the standpoint of what I went through emotionally. I testified before the United States Senate in 1981. Senator Nunn was the chair, and we spoke about the investigation, and we would speak about the investigation and the techniques and what we learned about organized crime. What I did later on, and what we did in that Daily News article, was talk about the emotional side of this, what it does to the undercover agent, what it does to someone that's going through that traumatic experience.
And how did it affect you? I mean, you're a young man, you're 21 years old, you're out of the academy for a year or so, and you know, you've got so much going for you as thing, but now you're kind of placed right in the fire.
Yeah, at 23 I go undercover. By the time I'm 24, I'm the president of this new trucking company. I'm meeting with mob guys in New York, New Jersey, Florida. We're going down to Hollywood, Florida, Joe Sonkin's Gold Coast restaurant. I met with Russ Buffalino, Johnny Keys Simone, main players in organized crime. I was very good at doing undercover work. We're all good at doing something. I'd be wired. But I'd also get 2 miles down the road after meeting with the mob guys and have to pull over and throw my guts up. Or I'd find the first gas station I could find because I had diarrhea. I'd wake up in the middle of the night and the bed would be soaking wet. I was experiencing normal reactions to fear when I would get into a relaxed state. But when I was working, when I had to be Bobby Covert, which is a catchy name for an undercover guy.
And we're going to talk about how you got that name.
I would be able to do it. But as soon as I got in a relaxed state, these other emotions would come out. But I wouldn't tell anybody because that would be admitting to my fears. And you know, cops, firefighters, soldiers, we all like to think of ourselves as being able to leap tall buildings in a single bound. We can handle it.
And the experience, you know, during this period of time that you're involved with this, I would think maybe the job got a little bit easier, but there's still that flux of emotional turmoil that's going on throughout the whole time.
Yeah, you're constantly. I'm wired most of the time. I'm wearing a recorder that I wore, and you know, if I'm found wearing that, they're going to think I'm an informant, and informants die in that world. So that's the ongoing stressor that you have. Plus, you're lying about everything, and you have to keep all your lies in order. So that kind of stress, living a life that is not one that's designed to be ours. If we became 2 or 3 personalities, we'd be calling that schizophrenia. And yet, what we ask undercover people to do is become someone else. And
you actually did. And we want to talk a little bit about how you became Bobby Covert. Now, if they were writing a screenplay and they said, let's come up with a name for an undercover cop, you know, we'll go, yeah, Covert. But this was the actual name of someone who had passed away and that you established. And tell us how that came to be.
Yeah, we weren't trying to be cute or funny. I took on the identity of a child who died at birth. And the birth records and death records are not cross-indexed in our country. So if you go to the death record site, find someone that died at birth, you can go over to the birth record site for $4, get the birth certificate, and now you can start your own persona. We learned that from the Weatherman Underground, a domestic terrorist group in the 70s. That's how they were developing so we took that way of doing it and put it into this. And it's important to have the first name be the same because I've been Robert or Bob or Bobby my entire life and I have to react to that. The last name, ethnic sounding, so Covert can be German or Irish. I grew up Irish. And age grouping being the same. So Robert Allen Covert was born in 1949. I was born in 1951.
So you create, here's this persona, Bobby Covert, and he had a nickname too.
I think you're going with Bobby Smash, and there is one that Shane Battier of the Miami Heat gave me years ago. He calls me Bobby Whistles.
Bobby Whistles, that's not a bad name either. But these are the kind of guys that you were dealing with. These gentlemen, and we have the slew of others that we're going to be showing. But these are the type of people that you dealt with day in and day out. And these are bad guys.
Yeah, this is Tino Fiumara, has B on his chest, and this is a surveillance photo in Newark, New Jersey. Tino was a captain in the Genovese crime family, a bad individual. This is a guy that had committed numerous crimes of the heinous type. And A is Joey Adonis. Joey Adonis is the son of the famed Joey Adonis, who was responsible for that mob murder that got all that attention with the barbershop chair back in the day.
Which is one of those iconic photos that you see when they're talking about organized crime. Now, these and other individuals that were part of the organized crime, both the Bruno and the Genovese crime families, these were bad guys. These were thieves. These were robbers. These were people that had no good motives in doing anything. And you mentioned the fact that when you would meet with them, you're wearing a wire. There had to be the fear in you of that. If I'm found out, I'm a dead man.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was an ongoing fear
which meant
on
nothing
a daily
to them.
basis.
I mean, to them, that was business as usual.
Yeah, we knew of people that murders they committed. We knew of the violence levels that took place within that subculture. So we were very aware of it. And when you work deep undercover, you don't have surveillance teams. You don't have anybody with you. You're not wearing a gun either, because in that culture, if you're wearing a gun, you're there to do business. At my level as president of the trucking company, I was a mob associate, and there was no reason for me to be carrying a gun. So I had no protection myself.
So you would go to these meetings, or they would come to you and they said, Bobby, we want you to do this. And the whole thing was built around, trying, they had their fingers in a lot of things.
Always. People always ask me about The Sopranos. And I said, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. It's every day you get up and you're figuring out a scam of trying to beat the system somehow. I mean, they came to me with all kinds of things. They came to me one day and said, you put the money up, buy a tow truck, and we'll paint it up to be the exact same as the Newark Police Department tow truck. And that way we could go around during the businessmen lunches and grab all the Cadillacs and the Lincoln Town cars, and we'll run them out. We'll do one day of stealing cars all over, and cops will be stopping traffic for us because they'll think this is the official police char. They had scam after scam after scam that was going on. The one thing I say to people, there's a lot of similarity between The Sopranos, but I never met any of these guys that was going to a psychiatrist or a psychologist looking for self-help like was on The Sopranos.
I doubt that would be the thing. But over the period of time, after 6 months and then a year and then another year goes by, you're developing relationships. You're developing, you go out to dinner, go out for a drink, see somebody at a party, and things like that. You're developing a relationship, not only as part of your work, but in connection with these individuals. So there is this kind of meshing of these two cultures coming together.
Yeah, Bob Delaney was in the rearview mirror. He no longer exists. Bob Covert was who I am.
But let me tell you an interesting, because this came out in one of the clips that we're going to show, is that a cover story was kind of created for Bob Delaney, where Bob Delaney went. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, one of the things that we wanted to do was push me away from the state police. So a personnel order came out, and that's like the Bible in the state police. Personnel orders come out on a daily basis. Someone retires, someone got promoted, something took place. I resigned from the New Jersey State Police on April 9th, 1975. I remember it clearly because when I looked at another personnel order went into the colonel's safe, and one was down in Washington, D.C. saying that I was on an undercover assignment.
Back at the New Jersey State Police barracks, rumors were swirling about the disappearance of Bob Delaney. Paperwork had been filed stating that he had resigned.
We could hear what some of the people were saying. He killed somebody, he shot somebody, he knifed somebody, all those stories are out.
While Delaney's father, mother, and sister all knew the truth, everyone else thought Bob Delaney had gone bad, including his friend Bob Scott, a fellow state trooper.
First thing I heard that morning was that Bob Delaney and a friend of his had gone to Florida, and that Bob had killed a guy and that he was under arrest for murder in Florida.
When I went undercover, Bobby kept reaching out for me. He was one of the people that kept reaching out for me.
I told him, I said, I had spoken to my wife. I told him, I said, you know, we don't have much money. We did have 4 children, and troopers didn't make much back then, but I said, whatever we do have, I said, my wife and I agreed that you can have it.
That's kind of touching when somebody does that to you, and you're sitting there and you're getting like teary-eyed and you're going, oh boy.
For the next couple of years, I wondered where he was, how he was making out. He never called me back.
Project Alpha was proceeding as planned. Alamo Transportation was being taken over by organized crime. The Genovese and Bruno crime families were each skimming 12.5% of the company's profits. Known as an earner, Bobby Covert was gaining acceptance in mob circles.
People in the New Jersey State Police, people in general, like to tell, you know, don't let the truth get in the way of a good story. So nobody could say, I don't know what happened to him. Everybody came up with all different kinds of stories. They thought that I got jammed up on a vacation down in Florida, that I had committed some kind of crime, and that because my father was on the job, that it was kind of whitewashed and I got pushed away. So there were all, it was like being at your own funeral and hearing people speak about you. To the point that, you know, it didn't bother me because I knew what I was doing and I was away from that. But my parents, who were very active in the state police. My mom and dad's, my mom especially, had to stop going to state police functions because she would hear as people would walk away, well, her son used to be a trooper, but he went bad. So that's the kind of thing that my family had to go through that I didn't deal with. And I, you know, I'm thinking in the first 6 months it's going to be this exciting kind of life. By the time it came almost 3 years, Charles, I wanted out. I just wanted to get away from this thing. It wasn't anything that had the excitement level that, you know, was early on in the project.
And a lot of it, you know, is in the mundane, you know, the day-to-day thing, waiting for them, strapping on wide. I mean, it becomes a routine, but always you're under the gun, so to speak, right, that you're an investigative officer investigating 2 brutal crime families. Right. So, I mean, you always have that on your mind. Yeah,
the emotional roller coaster ride was extremely heavy, and I felt that kind of pressure. I would not only feel it
and
internally,
as a young man,
physically I would feel it. I could feel pressure in my chest.
You know, 21, 22, 23
right,
years old when you're doing this, this has got to be an undue pressure. And even though you might be, you know, as strong and as capable as you were in trying to do all this, that pressure builds up over there. And I want to get back to that in a minute because that kind of carries over into the work that you're doing now. But I want to talk when this came, when they pulled the plug on this and they said we've got to round this up. We're calling it. We're going to, you know, we've got enough here. There's a great story in your book about where you go and they're bringing all the people in. You're standing there. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's in 1977 we are going to pull the plug. So arrests are going to be made. In the first wave of arrests, we're going to be 30 people that are going to be picked up in New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania, and all mob figures. We muster up, like police officers do, at a location. This one was the West Orange Armory, and there's uniformed troopers, state police detectives, FBI agents gather, and they start going out picking up the defendants. 2 uniformed troopers.
And that's a lot of them.
They start at 4 o'clock in the morning, find them in their homes, pick them up, and they start bringing them in. They start processing. Processing is taking pictures, interviewing them to see who's going to be the next informant, fingerprinting them, and that was being done downstairs. I was in the command post upstairs. I was with Sergeant Barry Lardier. I had nothing on me that said I was a state trooper. They had not given me my uniforms back yet. It wouldn't have mattered. I was 40 pounds overweight from when I left the state police as a uniformed trooper. They wouldn't have fit. And I had no badge yet. So Sergeant Lardier said to me, you want to go downstairs and see where they're being processed? I said yes when I meant no, because this is going to be the first time that I see them. The military bearing came back in that I had learned in the State Police Academy. I put myself at parade rest, head up, chest out, eyes up, because it's the first time I'm going to see them. Mm-hmm. And a guy by the name of Ronnie Sardella, a guy that I had stolen tractor-trailer loads of goods off the port of Newark, had committed crimes with, knew his wife, knew his kids, knew his family, had been to his house for dinner, was being fingerprinted. And as the trooper was recuffing him and put his cuffs back on him, Ronnie saw me out of the corner of his eye. And he said, Bobby, what they pinch you for? And before I could answer, Sergeant Lardier said to him, pinch? He's not pinch, he's a trooper, he's with us. The look that went between us was not one of anger. It was one of hurt and disappointment. And Ronnie said to me, Bobby, how can you do it to us? How can you do it to me? I'm your friend. That value of trust was broken the value that we all have in any relationship that we have is trust. And I didn't feel good about myself because I was seeing myself through the eyes of Bobby Covert. And
Not Bob Delaney.
Not Bob Delaney. And I felt horrible. It's an unwritten rule in the schoolyard that you don't tell on your friends. We're all socialized that way.
Right, right. When this was over, your responsibilities towards this was not done. You went ahead and testified in all of these cases, plus you went on to testify to the Senate Committee on Organized Crime. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, you know, when this ended, not only was that emotional side of it, but there was a threat on my life, and they had picked up on a wiretap as well as informant information. Major Bill Baum was in charge of the criminal investigation section for the state police, was the person who ran this whole investigation. And he met with me, and he played that tape. And, you know, I tried to act cool and said, that doesn't make for a good day, boss. And he had a good conversation with me. He helped me understand about where this was going. He said, you know, and that's Major Baum there, and those are the other three undercover agents, the other two undercover agents that were with me, Bobby Hess and Ralph Bono. When the major explained to me what was going on, he said, we're going to make this right, and we're going to have a security team with you. But I want you to think about who we're dealing with. I mean, they're not going to sit around and say, hey, why don't we have Bob Delaney over for a dinner tomorrow night? It's a funny thing he just did. He hung around with us for 3 years, and we're all going away for 8 to 20. So they're going to be reactive in that way. That's the way they speak. But we're not going to minimize the threat. And I had a security team with me at all times. And I would go testify in court cases or have to go out on surveillances to identify more people as this investigation continued to arrest people over the years. I got lucky. A guy by the name of John Schroth was a detective who happened to be part of that team. And he had a background in psychology from Rutgers University. And he was the first one that noticed that there was something going on inside of me. Because we'd get back into maybe stop in a diner or stop off someplace, and I'd fall back into Bobby Covert anytime I got into environments that were similar to what I was working with when I was undercover. And I pushed him away and said, you know,
I'm okay.
I'm okay.
I get through this. Yeah, it's no big thing.
You don't understand. Then I was doing a lot of presentations. As you said, I testified before the United States Senate. I would go around the country telling the story to police academies and police training centers. And I happened to be at Jersey City Police Department doing a program explaining this whole investigation. And Hank Campbell was in the audience, Dr. Hank Campbell. He was my college psychology professor at Jersey City State College. I always say that I was academically challenged at one of the finest institutions in the United States, Harvard on the Hudson up there in Jersey City. And Hank was the first one that started talking to me, and we did informal therapy. And Hank said to me, you're going through post-traumatic stress. I said, get out of here, Hank. That's what I'm reading about for guys from Vietnam. I'm a trooper. It's the soldier thing. That's not me. And then Louis Freeh, who we know became the 15th director of the FBI, and just recently with the Freeh report with Penn State. Louis was an FBI agent and was involved in my investigation, was also involved in an investigation over in New York. And he put me together. He knew about this emotional roller coaster ride I was on. I opened up to him. And he put me together with Joe Pistone. Joe Pistone is the real Donnie Brasco.
Now, this is a great story because there's a little clip that we're going to play from the video where Joe Pistone, who the movie Donnie Brasco was kind of fashioning, you know, and he was deep undercover for a long period of time.
Joe Pistone, a former FBI agent, ought to know. He spent 6 years in the 1970s infiltrating the mafia. And in 1997, Hollywood made a movie about his life. Joe Pistone is the real Donnie Brasco, who actually crossed paths with Bobby Covert, never suspecting that he was also working undercover.
There's not much room for negotiations, you know. There's no second takes. You make the first take count, otherwise you're history.
Joe Pistone, who had just completed his own undercover tour, took Delaney aside and gave him some advice straight from The Godfather.
I told him, you know, Bobby, you got to remember, this is strictly business. It's not personal. There's nothing personal involved in this. You are doing your job, nothing more, nothing less.
When I got with Joe Pistone and we were able to talk, I could see it in his body language. I could see it in his eyes that he understood what I was talking about. That was my first introduction to peer-to-peer therapy. I am a tremendous believer, and this is what I share with the troops and cops and firefighters, that we need peer-to-peer therapy. I use the analogy that if you have a balloon full of air, how do you get the air out of the balloon? I can let it go, it flies all over this room, it's out of control, we don't know where it ends up. I can take a pin and pop that balloon. but we don't have a balloon anymore. We got the air out. Or if I'm willing to listen to some sounds that maybe I don't want to hear, and I have the patience and take the time, and I turn it upside down, little air at a time, it makes that noise that maybe you don't want to hear. Eventually we're going to get all the air out of the balloon, and we'll have a full balloon we can use again one day. That's us with trauma. That's us with experiences that we have, like my undercover. I needed to get the air out of my balloon and talk about it. But what do? More often than not, human beings push it down, especially cops, firefighters, and soldiers. They think they can handle it, so they push it down, and they push it away, and then it builds up. And if you get too much air in a balloon, it's going to burst.
And the awakening, or that kind of agreement where you were able to realize that was kind of really a turning point, for you as you came out of the Bobby Covert back to the Bob Delaney and continued on a very successful career. Now, leaving the state police had to be a hard decision.
It was. I had 14 years in the state police at the time that I was offered the position with the NBA. And the reason that I got to the NBA had nothing to do with me wanting to be an NBA referee. That actually became my therapy. Because when I was going through that emotional roller coaster ride after the undercover job, I wanted to find something that gave me an inner peace, that gave me an inner balance.
Which you went back to your kind of high school days, or playing and then you started officiating, doing some local officiating, high schools, college, and that had to be kind of very therapeutic.
Yeah, I started refereeing at the high school level. And when I got there were rules. And now that I know more about post-traumatic stress, I now realize what it was doing for me. My hypervigilance was being given attention because I had to look all over the floor. There was all things going on. I was physically moving, which is positive. So all of those things that basketball did for me, it gave me my life back. And then one thing led to another. I was working a high school ball game. A guy named Larry Hennessy was the commissioner of the Jersey Shore Summer Pro League. He asked me to work there, and I did. And I know because of my state police background that people knew that I could handle a game. I may not be the best referee in the world, but I also know that I'm going to not allow
not going to let anybody push you
around, or there's not going to be any fights. So I started refereeing in the Jersey Shore Summer Pro League. Darryl Garrettson happened to be in the stands. He was the director of officials for the NBA. He hired me into the Continental Basketball Association. And that's how I found out about Manatee County. Because back then I was refereeing ball games at the Manatee Civic Center, Robarts Arena with the Sarasota Stingers. Billy Musselman was coaching the Tampa Bay Thrillers up in Tampa. And I would come down in for 2-3 ball games during a weekend. And I said, man, if I ever get into the NBA, I'm going to come live here. This is a beautiful place.
What a great place to come back to.
So all of these things are interconnected.
And it's great that you kind of were at least touch base here back. What was it? It had to be the late 80s?
That was 84, 85, 83, 84, 85.
Yeah. A lot of things changed in Manatee County since then. But the thing is having that progression, and it's very funny that you said that therapy, gave you back your life type of thing. Basketball was a major influence, not as only as a young man when you're in high school. We saw the shot of 1,000 points in 2 years, but coming back out of a very stressful and excruciatingly long period of time, 3 years away from your friends, from your family, and then back into that basketball was that thread. But in 1987, you came into the NBA.
Yes, I got hired into the NBA. I had my first game at Madison Square Garden.
What a great...
My mom and dad were there. I mean, it was a
tremendous... That had to be a tremendous thing. You remember that first game?
Absolutely. I don't remember. I remember the Knicks played, and I don't know who played against them, and I can tell you that Jess Kersey was the other official because he was the senior official I was with. Darryl Garrettson was at the game. I can tell you those kinds of things. Do I remember who won and lost? I don't. Any of those kinds of things I don't remember.
But it's surprising because, over your career, your 25-year career, 1,700 games. And I mean, that is just incredible. 1,700 games, 10 finals.
I worked 9 finals over 10 years, and
2 All-Stars.
2 All-Star games.
The most recent was 2011.
And 2011, in Los Angeles. And the first one I had was in Madison Square Garden in 1998.
Now, basketball, it's changed significantly, and it continues to change. But that was like the days of the Celtics and the Lakers.
Yeah, when I broke in, it was the Magic and Larry years. Those were the years of the Celtics and Los Angeles Lakers, and Actually, my first year of refereeing at the pro level was Julius Erving's last year in the National Basketball Association, and remember that as well.
I have to tell you that being able to run up and down those courts with professional athletes year after year, that takes a little bit of a toll on you, doesn't it?
Yeah, I've been fortunate. Physically, I could have went on a little bit longer, but I knew it was time for me to leave.
You're in the NBA and you're playing. You're traveling all over the country. You're at the top of your game, and you're traveling a lot as an NBA ref. Tell us a little bit about the life of an NBA ref.
Yeah, the lifestyle is a vagabond lifestyle. You're on the road for 25 days a month, not consecutive, but 25 days out of the month. You're working about 10 to 14 ball games a month, and you're never
Different
working.
cities.
You never work in the same town twice. So like baseball comes in, they'll come in to work the Rays, and they come in for a 3 to 5 game homestand. They stay in one town. We were every 36 hours you're in a different town, so you're constantly on an airplane moving from town to town. But and physically, as you said earlier, you've got to be in tremendous shape, because if you get physically tired, you're going to make poor decisions, because physical tiredness leads to mental fatigue.
Right.
So that's the reason, not only staying up with those tremendous athletes, but you, as an official, you need to have your senses about you at all times. And if you get physically tired, those are going to drag down. But I'm looking at this picture.
It's a great picture.
Of Pat Riley. This is, I can tell by the uniform style that it's a little bit back in the day, and plus I don't have any gray hair, nor does Pat. So it's either when Pat was with the Knicks or early days of the Miami Heat, or maybe even back in the Lakers, but I don't think it's the Lakers. But I remember the first time I worked him in the Lakers, and Magic was white, and Pat was testing me, and I gave him a technical foul. And Magic came over to me with that great smile, and he said, he doesn't like you in this league. You got better hair than he does. So Pat and I have always had, we may be discussing whether we have gel or hairspray in at that time.
I think you're looking at him and mentioning that perhaps he might be wrong on this particular thing.
Interactions between coaches and referees are always interesting, and we forget that there's 20,000 people watching us and more.
And there are. There's 20,000 people watching you, and the referees are there, to be decisive and fair. And here's another great picture, which I like a lot. You can see the intensity. It's that same kind of intensity that you saw in some of those earlier shots when you were the state police. This is your crew?
Well, actually, I'm a referee in this crew. Bennett Salvatore is the official that you'll see with his back to our left side, and Duke Callahan probably only got about a year in, and now Duke's got 20-some years in. So this was back earlier in my career as we were starting to make the move towards crew chief, but I wasn't a crew chief yet. And that's a full head of dark hair.
Not a gray hair on there.
Not a gray hair in that head.
And there's another great picture.
That's a shot back from the CBA days, and that's Cassie Russell. Cassie Russell was coaching in the league, and we were up in Albany, New York. Phil Jackson is coaching on the other side of the floor. Phil was with the Albany Patroons, and Cassie was with, I forget what team he was with right then, but those were venues that were tremendous learning. It built foundation for
skills, and your skill.
Absolutely.
And this is still another little, and you're still, that's early on in your career.
That's a fellow police officer, Shaquille O'Neal.
Which he's had a badge as well.
He's got a lot of badges. He's been with quite a few different police departments. Is very serious about police departments. Is tremendous to those who serve. His dad was in the military.
That's correct.
Sarge, and his family are from Newark, New Jersey, and many of them are police officers and fire. So he has a tremendous heart for those who serve. And talk about a big kid. I mean, the guy loves to have a good time, but he was one special talent and strongest person I've ever refereed by far.
Well, and that's one of the things I want to take a moment. I mean, during your 25-year career, you've seen some of the best basketball players in the world play. And they're tremendous athletes. And you saw Larry Bird, you saw Magic Johnson, you've seen people like Shaq and Michael Jordan,
Julius
and
Erving.
The whole thing, and Julius Erving. Some of the best athletes. Now, I'm pretty sure they didn't agree with you all the time.
No, not often.
But there's a thing that they learn to respect people who are fair and decisive. And you grew, and all the respect of these players had for you is evident in how much they cared for you when you retired.
Yeah, I think that's part of the state police background, is that you learn early on in the academy that respect is not given, you demand respect. And the respect is for the uniform that you wear and for the authority that you represent. I took that into the NBA as well. That uniform and that authority that I have was extremely important to me. And a guy like Shaquille O'Neal, just going back into the kind of players that I was around, Jack Madden was a great basketball referee and was one of my mentors and one of the guys that I was around. And Jack had refereed Wilt Chamberlain. And I remember the first night that we had a game with Shaquille, and he said, I never thought I would see a player that was stronger than Wilt Chamberlain. Yeah. He said, I think I just saw it. And so that's the kind of player that Shaquille O'Neal was.
And a huge talent, just a huge talent. Now, one of the best players ever to play the game, arguably the best player ever, Michael Jordan. And not only, there's a great shot where you guys are discussing something.
We were just having a little discussion, and Michael was not happy, and that argument went on for a period of time. He thought he got fouled. I didn't think he was fouled. It was towards the end of a ball game. His team went on to win the ball game. It was in Atlanta. But, you see the intensity there. And that's the difference between pro athletes and athletes. There's an intensity and a will to win. And then there's another level within the pro ranks. That's the difference of Michael Jordan. That's the difference of Larry Bird, Magic. They have an intensity of a will to win. And there's a little more subdued. We're both getting older. I'm a grandpa by then, and Michael came back to the Washington Wizards, and he's a little bit older. So our discussion levels are a little bit different. A little
wiser. But, there's a great shot.
This is a classic, because you're talking about 3 Hall of Famers right there. Yep. Jerry Sloan, John Stockton, and Karl Malone. And Jerry and I are arguing, and I'm going to tell you who the voice of reason was. John Stockton.
Really?
John said to me, Bob, please just stop, because he won't.
He's not going to stop. And that's
Patrick Ewing and Ricky Mahorn. Ricky Mahorn used to be with the Bad Boys of Detroit, and there he's playing for the Nets. I ejected both of them in that ball game. And the funny part to this story is, here they're fighting on the court. What I hear later is they're both watching the rest of the game together, having a sandwich in the back after they got ejected. So it's emotion. It's all it is an emotion on the floor.
And caught up.
That's all.
And that's the intensity of the game and the fever pitch that it's going. But as a referee, you're there, for you know the rules, you know the things, and you can't be everything at one place. You're calling it at the moment that you see it.
Yeah, you're calling it in real time. And this year was the best year I had officiating, because I didn't work this year. I retired at the end of last year. I called all the referees. I said, this job is easy from the couch. I didn't miss any calls from it. You can rewind it. You can see all the plays. Yeah. It's on the floor that you have some problems.
See it in slow-mo. You can see it in slow-mo.
It's amazing.
You can see everything. Now, one of the things, and we have a little clip that we're going to be playing, is that people always test you. They're always testing you. And there's the quote that we're going to play on the little video clip is that you're pretty sure that you know the rules more than the other guy.
Now what do you want to do?
I want to do right here.
Don't test me.
Well, I know
Don't test me. Lottie, I'm going to tell you one more time.
Okay, Bob.
Moving forward. Thank you.
Check the rules.
I read them a lot more than you do.
Vladdy was challenging my knowledge of the rules, and I assured him that I knew him a lot better, because I know I read that rule book a lot more than he does.
And here's a great quote, and here you are again as a very young man with Larry Bird, and this is I think it's a great work ethic that makes Bird so special.
Yeah, what I said, I never tell the kids about the talent of a Larry Bird. I tell them about Bird's work ethic. How many times did he practice that shot in the backyard in Indiana or at a deserted gym somewhere? Work ethic is what makes Bird so special. What I mean by that is people see a game on a Sunday afternoon and they think that players are just God-given talents that they want. Yeah, is there a talent level? Absolutely. But there's a work ethic that takes place. And the difference in that dedication and commitment, no matter, Larry Bird, Michael Jordan would have been successful at whatever they did. It didn't matter if they were basketball players, because their work ethic would have drove them to be the best that they could be.
And successful.
And that's what we should be admiring, not their athleticism, admire the work ethic.
And this is a great thing. And again, what year would you think this is here, Bob?
Well, this has got to be probably late 80s, early 90s, probably 89 or so.
And there's another great iconic shot of you and Phil Jackson. And obviously, again, pointing out to you, something that he might disagree with.
Yeah, it's the late 90s, early 2000, and Phil is having a discussion. Phil is an interesting guy. I refereed him at the Continental Basketball Association level when he was with the Albany Trune, into Chicago, his years when he was an assistant coach in the NBA. So we grew up together, and we actually retired the same year. And one of the things that he is able to do, and I remember hearing him say this to players, to other coaches, is that it's not about imposing your will and being that you have to be a tough guy to impose your will. People want to say you're soft unless you're yelling and screaming, and that's not true. He said people will follow, and you don't have to be demeaning and hurtful in order for people to follow. And what a great lesson in leadership that is, beyond the game of basketball.
Absolutely.
That serves us all well in every facet of life.
Well, and through this career, though, through your experiences not only on the court, but off the court with some of these people that you've developed a relationship and friendships with, that in itself kind of molded and shaped you for, what you wanted to do later. Because you knew after 20 years, what did you think was going to come follow up for you?
Yeah, I didn't know what was coming, but I knew probably around my 21st, 22nd year that we're getting close here. This is going to be, and I made a decision 2 years before I announced it that was going to be my last year, the season of 2010, 2011. My last year was in the playoffs of 2011.
Right.
And they say that there's two great days in your life, the day that you're born and the day that you figure out why you were born. And I take all of these experiences that I had, and it takes me up to where I am today and the work that I'm doing today. And I really believe that these experiences were important. Well,
through basketball, and we want to take a little moment on this shot because we're going to play a little clip, not only of this. Tell us who's in this picture.
Yeah, it's Ray Liotta in the middle, and Mark Wunderlich, myself, and that's a game in Los Angeles. In fact, it was Michael Jordan's last game in Los Angeles, now that I remember. Being two Jersey boys, we developed a relationship, and he's a funny guy because he said to me, I read all about what you did, and you were around all these tough guys. He said, I always play tough guys in a movie, but he said, the truth is, I got in a fight in 7th grade, and I got my butt kicked. And he said, I haven't been in a fight since. I'm not a tough guy. So Ray's a tremendous actor, as we all know. His portrayal of Henry Hill, who recently just passed away, is iconic in The Goodfellas. And I say to folks that truly is what that lifestyle I led is like.
And we're going to play a clip because Ray narrates a great little piece that ESPN did on you and on Covert, and it was a tremendous little thing. He brings that kind of intensity even to his voiceover when he's doing stuff. So it's a really great little segment. We're going to take a look at that.
Bobby Covert entered the scene as the owner of a small trucking company called Mid-Atlantic Air Sea. It was a legitimate business designed to lure organized crime families to muscle in. After 6 months, Mid-Atlantic wasn't drawing much interest from the mob. So Covert opened a bigger target, Alamo Transportation in northern New Jersey, just a few miles outside of New York City. This time, the Genovese and Bruno crime families took notice, and Covert began associating with the mafia, secretly recording their conversations.
Well, that's another Jersey boy. I mean, he's from New Jersey.
Yeah, there you go. But as you've gone through and you've seen so many wonderful athletes, spectacular games. This one here, towards the end of your career, I think this is in Orlando.
This is actually the All-Star game. This is in Staples Arena. This is the 2011 All-Star game. You can see the players down at Pau Gasol. Yeah. And you can see the All-Star uniforms that are on the players.
And then, of course, here you got Justin Bieber.
I didn't even realize that. Is that who that is?
You got Justin Bieber over here.
Yeah, I didn't have
Bieber
fever.
You got Gene Simmons from Kiss up here.
Oh, really? Very good.
And Warren Beatty, right here.
Tremendous.
And of course Bob Delaney.
Yeah. I didn't even pick up on all those. That's very good on your part,
When you're at a
Charles.
game there, and you get 25,000 at some of these arenas, and the roar of the crowd and the heat of the moment and stuff like that, does that affect you? I mean, as a referee, when you're there and you hear, the fans going crazy and they're, stomping and clapping and everything, how does that intensity? Do you feel that pressure?
Oh, you can feel the intensity of an arena. You don't hear the particular noise levels. You hear a din of noise off to the side, and you hear it rise up and go down, and you hear, because your level of attention and focus is so strong as to what's taking place. Right. That's my office. Yeah. That's your your office is this set. You know what's going on here, and there's a focus level that has to be had. You also know that if you allow yourself the luxury of looking over and seeing Justin Bieber, you're going to be in a lot of trouble because we just don't have that luxury. So when you get there, the focus level has to be strong. So you're aware of the crowd, but not as in tune as to what you just pointed out for me. But you do hear great lines, like walking off the floor after one game after a Los Angeles Clipper game. A guy was yelling over the banister, yelling, spittle coming out of his mouth. Delaney, you're the worst referee I ever see. So I've seen better referees at the Foot Locker, and I thought that was a great line. I hear don't quit your day job. Those kinds of things are every day. But when you come up with a classic line like that, and one of the really great classics that I heard was in Washington. I called a foul, and as I'm going to the table to report it, a guy stands up from behind in the stands and says, Delaney, they should put you in the witness relocation program after that call. So they know about my background.
See, you probably get booze and everything on that wherever it goes. Now, I want to move through this, and there's some great shots of you with a lot of standout players and a career. But as you've gone through this, I mean, is there a series, is there a game, or is there something that kind of stands out in your memory in your career?
I've had a lot of great games.
Oh,
I've
absolutely.
been fortunate. The All-Star games are memorable. The first time that you work in a finals game is memorable. The first time that you work on the floor, just going into the NBA. But I have to say that I've worked ball games in China. I've had games with the NBA in China and Japan. But I tell folks that the two most memorable games that I have as a result of being with the NBA are games that I refereed in Iraq and refereed games in Afghanistan. And they were our troops. And the men and women who serve us got a kick because I would put my uniform on and go out and referee unit games. And it was a little different setting. I never had so many guns along the sidelines of a game. But those, to me, are memorable games. Those are the two that I remember. And the excitement of what took place because it was a diversion from war.
Absolutely.
And we were able to have a game in a makeshift gym in Iraq, a makeshift gym in Afghanistan.
You're bringing a bit of home, right, too. And the same efficiency and fairness and decisiveness that you brought to all these NBA games, you brought it to
and the same intensity.
Yeah.
They wanted to win, and I wanted to make sure that I did my job right.
I'm sure every one of those troops is just as competitive and just as driven as anyone that you see here, because they're fighters, and that's what they want to do. But as your career came to an end in 2011, and the Orlando, we're going to play some sequences from that, which was a moving ceremony. I mean, and for you, it had to be a moving ceremony of dedicating so much of your life, 25 years, traveling all over 1,700 games, to see that come to a close. It had to be a moment where you had to like a little step back and look around and say, this is the last time on the court.
Ladies and gentlemen, following a stellar career in law enforcement that included perilous undercover work for the New Jersey State Police, during which he put his life on the line infiltrating organized crime, Bob Delaney joined the NBA as a referee in 1987. He's been one of the league's most respected officials, and after a career that included over 1,700 regular and postseason games, tonight, Bob Delaney will officiate his final NBA regular season game. We now direct your attention to center court, where two highly decorated members of the military will each present Bob Delaney with awards honoring some of his career achievements. First, United States Army Major General Ronald Johnson, currently the NBA Senior Vice President of Referee Operations, will commemorate his tremendous service to the NBA by presenting Bob Delaney with a plaque making him a referee emeritus. And Ron Johnson will also present Bob Delaney with multiple distinguished awards, including the President's Volunteer Service Award, recognizing his work in helping the victims and families of the 2009 Fort Hood military post shootings who suffered post-traumatic stress disorder. Ladies and gentlemen, please join our presenters and the NBA family in honoring number 26, Bob Delaney, for his incredible years of service. And Bob has also been selected to be a 2011 playoff official. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, number 26, Bob Delaney.
It's the last time that I'm going to be working a regular season game. I did work some playoff games after that. But it is, and to have my family there was special. Transitions are difficult for us, you know, in whatever walk of life you're in. So it was an emotion, but you also knew that you had to focus and work that ball game. And then afterwards, we had a nice party and get together with all the folks. And it was special, and I have great memories of that. And you know, this year, as I'm watching the games, it only hit me twice, and hit me hard, watching the game on a Sunday afternoon, thinking I'll never do that again. And it was such a big part of my life. And then you realize the finality of it.
But you know, but as you came to a close on the NBA portion of your career, another door opens. And that door had always been somewhat open because for a period of time, for a long period of time in your life, you had been reaching out to police and firefighter and troops. And in 2009, you made your initial trip to Iraq. And as part of the NBA ambassador. But your background, your experience, and your connection with people led you to something else. It led you, you know, to recognize and become a really good advocate for post-traumatic stress. And we want to talk about your book a little bit, but I want you to talk a little bit when you landed on the ground that first time in Iraq, and you know that troops are starved to see people from home. They, you know, there's an automatic connection, and as I mentioned at the beginning, you know, General Brown said that you were the only one who made the best connection ever with his troops there. How did that make you feel? I mean, what was the feeling and the emotions that were running through you when you were there, you know, thousands of miles from home in a war zone, you know, and trying to connect with these young men and women?
Yeah, we landed in the airfield in Camp Diamondback in Mosul, Iraq. And we were given a briefing by General Brown, got assigned a CHU. I didn't know what a CHU was, but I got assigned one. It was a contained housing unit. And you know, you see those big T-walls, concrete walls that are up, and the CHUs are 2 beds in these kind of metal containers that are lined up with each other, and that's where you live, and there's latrines down at the end. And I was embedded with the 25th Infantry Division up in Mosul. Tim Dwight and I went with Ron Barr. Ron Barr has a radio show called Sports Byline. It's the #1 rated sports show with armed forces. Ron has been doing these kinds of trips. And I was a guest on his show, and he asked if I would make the trip over. My publisher was very generous, donated about 800 books, and so I would do book signings every night and do presentations about my story, pointing the finger at me of the post-traumatic stress that I went through, in hopes that they would be reflective of maybe something they were experiencing. And then that led to me getting around and being involved with the troops more and more. And once one general saw it, what happened was the shootings that took place in 2009 at Fort Hood. When General Cone was the commanding general there. General Brown called General Cone and said, you should get this guy Delaney over there. He had just been over to visit us in Iraq. And then General Cone invited me down, and it was about 3 weeks after the shootings, and I spent 3 days there speaking with probably about 8,000 troops, police officers and civilians that were impacted by those shootings. I've been back to Fort Hood on numerous occasions afterwards. And that time spent with the men and women there underlined that it was not only the need to be in the war zone, we need to be speaking about this at home.
Exactly.
And the more that I became involved with them, the more that I understood that there were such similarities to what I experienced as to what their experience. I used to say that soldiers need to talk to soldiers, cops to cops, firefighters to firefighters. Today I bring them all together.
Yeah.
Because by them each hearing that they're all going through something similar, it helps them understand that this is not just a military condition. It's not just a firefighter's condition. It's not. In fact, it's a human condition. It's not a mental illness when we talk about post-traumatic stress.
Right.
I underline that over and over. And the more that we have an understanding of what we're talking about. So my belief is that we need a post-traumatic stress education awareness program. General Odierno, General Cohn agree, and they've tapped me, and I've been going around to Iraq, Afghanistan, Landstuhl, Germany at the medical center. I've been to every, pretty much every military post, Army post in the United States, and sharing this message. Because the more we become educated about something, the more we're aware of something, the more we can put up roadblocks to not allow it to become deeper. So my goal is to keep post-traumatic stress at post-traumatic stress, not allow it to become the disorder.
Right.
And we've done this with HIV/AIDS, we've done it with alcohol, tobacco, we've done it with drugs. We've given an awareness program to the citizens of the United States, to the world. And we've been able to reduce ways that we're being hurt by these things. We should do it with post-traumatic stress.
And you know, not only are you to be commended for this, but you know, coming from your background where you actually went through this and can share this, and that's key in what you were talking about, peer-to-peer counseling, where you know warriors are a different breed of people. You know, you tell them, well, we need to go over and take that bridge, or you need to be in there. They'll do that. And with no questions asked. But you ask them to sit down and talk to you about how they're feeling about that or how they're dealing with this, and it's not so easy. And
we're, you know, that's part of our society. Is we're brought up, guys are told not to cry. You're a man, don't cry. Don't allow. I share this story with them. I talk about the first accident that I ever went as a New Jersey State Trooper. I only had about a month and a half on the job. I was with Gary Rinkert, a senior trooper. We get there, it's a fatal accident. At a fatal accident, there's not much to do. Once it's deemed to be fatal, you wait for the experts to come. And it was two kids on a motorcycle with a truck. I don't have to go into the grisly details. And I could feel my legs shaking underneath my uniform. But I was afraid that Gary was going to see it, the senior trooper was going to see it and think that maybe I was afraid that I couldn't handle it. So he was smoking a cigar. He's been down this road many times. An ambulance worker happened to be walking by, was smoking a cigarette. I never smoked, but I wanted to act cool. And I said, I'll take one of those. And he was smoking Camel Unfiltered. I took a hit on that. I thought I was going to throw up or pass out. But what happened is, once it was over, I went back to the state police station. I went in the bathroom and I cried my eyes out. And I did it quietly in hopes that no other trooper would hear me because they wouldn't want to go on patrol with me. They would think I was weak. And yet, when I got the courage to tell that story in front of other troopers, other police officers, by the time I walk to the back of the room on a break, they come up and say I went through something similar. So my hope is to move the bar. Men and women who serve us are heroic in their actions.
Absolutely.
Yet we have to remember there's human beings inside those uniforms, and that it's okay to show emotion when the appropriate time is available. So what I offer to them is that my hope is that the next generation isn't about troopers going in bathrooms trying to cry and hope that no one knows it. It's okay to have emotion. It's okay to get the air out of your balloon.
And you know, the military has recognized and fairly recently is that they have a problem. They have a problem there. You know, suicides have spiked. You know, there's depression. There's all sorts of domestic violence. You know, they recognize that there's an issue, and you know, having individuals like you who can go out there and talk not only to military but to families as well, because you did another outreach, you know, to family members as well, and that's very important for them to understand they're not in this alone. They're not. There's their brother in arms out there.
Yeah, telltale signs of post-traumatic stress are isolation and avoidance, hypervigilance, paranoia, anger levels that are off the charts. You know, back when I surfaced from doing the undercover work, I tell them the story that if you came to my house, you would think I loved paintings and art because there was a different one on a different wall every time. But that was me hiding. I would, like a frustrated child, I would punch the walls because I didn't know what was going on inside of me. And by punching the walls, I was like a little kid. But then I started painting up there over the top of it, and how, you know, I didn't know how to spackle or do anything. I couldn't fix anything. So I was trying, but how prophetic it was. I was hiding what truly was going on inside me as a person. And when I share these stories, so many times it's reflective of what they're going through. Paranoia. I would get up in the middle of the night with my weapon out, pushing back shower curtains because I thought they were coming to get me. So many times I hear the same thing. They believe they're still in the war zone. You know, we bring troops back home from Iraq and Afghanistan. We've been at war for 10 years.
10 years.
They're still riding down the street looking for IEDs, and they're on Main Street, Bradenton. And they are still reacting. And I understand that because I continued to react after I came to the surface from doing the undercover work as if I was still with the mob guys. So it takes time. And what I say to folks is that this post-traumatic stress need not be a lifelong sentence, but I do believe that it's a lifelong journey of healing.
And people continue to do that. But you didn't just stop there. You've gone back on several occasions, both to Iraq and both to Afghanistan, and you're continuing your outreach, not only at the command level, but also at a sports level. And we want to show a little clip of that, of how you're continuing to outreach and building hearts and minds, which is very important with your sports background.
Great leaders are willing to be led. Leadership, the leadership process involves all of us. Everything taking place here at the AAU Afghanistan Sports Leadership Conference is leadership, because not one person is able to do all this. General Akbar is the leader, but he brings in other people to help with the leadership process. And you are part of that. We're actually reaching out to the NATO troops. So this is the Iraqi army that we're interacting with. You can see General Brown over my shoulder, the tall gentleman in the back with the army uniform on. But here is General Shirko, and we're up in Kurdistan. We're at the Citadel, the oldest inhabited location in the world, and we're having conversations about post-traumatic stress. In Afghanistan, with the General Allen is the commander of the International Security Assistance Forces, and I was with Mongolian troops, troops from Germany, from all different countries, and we're sharing this message with them as well, because this is a human condition. It's not about just U.S. soldiers. It's all of us that see and experience trauma. The most common cause of post-traumatic stress is an automobile accident. This is landing in Iraq. That's General Brown, just as we got off the C-130.
Now, let
me
interrupt
the body
you for
armor that I'm carrying.
I'm glad you put it on right away. General Brown, we have a little clip. Is General Brown the one you played a little hoops with?
Yes, yeah.
Well,
General
we have
Brown,
a clip, and we want to show this. And tell us a little bit about that story, if you could.
We were up in the Syrian border, northern Iraq, and had went and visited a small FOB, forward operating base, and they had not had a visitor in a year. And it was 20 Marines, 20 Navy personnel, and 20 Army that made up this small group that was a guard group near the entry to Iraq from Syria. And we went and visited them. They were under General Brown's command, and spent time with them. And as we were walking back from the Syrian border and all the secure area and troops all around us, I saw an old basketball hoop that was just like hanging off the side, and it had a red, white, and blue ball on the ground. And it just, how do these things take place? Bob played at West Point for Coach K. And Coach K always said that Bob was one of two players that could have played for him at Duke. That's how good Bobby Brown was. And so I heard about all this, and I said, okay, General, let's have a little contest here. And in front of all his troops.
He was at a little slight disadvantage, too, because not only was he wearing a sidearm, but, you know, he was in front of all of his troops. But, you know, as you go there and you're doing that morale building, you know, it's a continuous kind of outreach as well, because you're building bridges. You're building bridges not only with the young men and women who are there, but you're building bridges to the people in the command structure that know the value and the worth of, you know, trying to connect with that message of, you know, let's talk about the issues before the issues become so hard that they can't we can't solve them.
Yeah, we have tremendous leadership. You know, General Odierno is the Chief of Staff with the Army. General Dempsey is the Commander, Chief of Staff. And General Lloyd Austin. General Bob Cohn is a tremendous guy. He's in charge of all training and doctrine.
TRADOC Command.
TRADOC Command. And Admiral McRaven, who is in charge of SOCOM, they are embracing the message that I'm sharing because I believe that we're handling this in reverse order. I think that we're waiting till post-traumatic stress disorder manifests itself in ways of what are traditional mental illnesses, and then we're trying to treat it with medication. And in my view, what we're doing is creating another problem because we're going to have a drug-dependent group of folks that are coming back. I believe that they need 21st century therapies. For me, it was basketball. 21st century therapies are things like Ride to Recovery. Ride to Recovery is a bicycle ride that my wife Billy and I went on, 9/11 Challenge. John Warden started it a few years back. These are long-distance bicycle rides, and we went from Ground Zero, Liberty State Park, to Shanksville, to the Pentagon. 8 days of riding, 580 miles, 350 people, 250 were wounded warriors with visible and invisible wounds. The other 100 were made up of police officers and firefighters and family members impacted by 9/11. And what took place on that ride was peer-to-peer therapy. You had a soldier by the name of Dexter who was hit with an IED that was on a tandem. He was blind. His buddy was riding in the front, he was on the back of the bicycle. And at night, sitting around and having dinner, he told those other troops about how he thought about suicide because this was not the life he wanted to lead, not being able to see. Yet he said, you know what? When I feel my kids running their hands across my face, I wouldn't give that up for anything in the world. And that's what they need to hear. They need to hear from each other. It's those who served that went through the same thing.
You know, that's a critical thing, and what it is, it opens doors. And we have some other additional pictures. You got Charles Barclay here. He seems to be enjoying the bike ride.
Well, what happened is I kept in contact with Charles, and I said, Charlie, we're going to be in Philadelphia. We're going to go from Jersey to Philadelphia. If you're in town, because he lives in Philadelphia during the summer months, and he agreed to come out. And we surprised the troops, those 350 were out. Yeah. And Charles rode with us from Philadelphia to Valley Forge.
Wow.
He doesn't have bicycle. He's got a regular pair of khaki shorts on, and you know, we couldn't even find a shirt that fit him. I always say to folks, I feel like I'm in the movie Blindside here. Like Billy and I, this is my wife Billy. This is our adopted child Charles. He's hugging his mom and dad, and but what he did for them. And you know, I always tell him that God gave him that big body because he had to figure out a way to get that big heart in there. This guy is someone that gives of himself. He took a picture with every one of those people, and he spent time with them, and he developed relationships, and he created an environment on that ride that day that was exciting. And this is what people of influence can do. They can make a difference in the men and women who serve us lives.
And they can touch you as
Yes.
well. I mean, I'm sure having Charles and you and with those wounded warriors on that ride, you actually could touch someone and say, you know, you can make a difference. You can get through this.
Yep.
You know, and we have a better picture of Billy without her helmet on. And you know, tell us a little bit about Billy. How long have you guys been married now?
Yeah, Billy and I have been married for 11 years, and you know, we're both on our second marriage, and it's a blended family. I say that our family tree is put together with duct tape, but it works for us. And she is a tremendous person, and you know, we all need somebody that inspires us on a daily basis. Billy does that for me every day.
And here you are coming across
We're
bridge.
coming into Valley Forge towards the end of the ride. Charles is sucking wind big time right there. When we get him off that bike, but he's soaking wet. He fell twice. And
on the bike?
On the bike. It was a 23-mile ride from, we did 65 miles that day. And he said he wanted to go the whole way. I said, Charles, you can't. I mean, you got to train for this kind of thing. Well, but he picked himself up each time, and that's the the commitment, dedication, because he said I wasn't going to not be with those troops when we got to Valley Forge.
That's a great sense of dedication.
But that's that will to win that athletes have. That's what warriors have. That's what soldiers have. That's what cops and firefighters have.
And that's where you're continuing to channel your efforts and your knowledge and your expertise is to work towards that, that wounded warrior. So I want to talk a little bit about your book, Surviving the Shadows. This is a wonderful book here because. And you were talking about Vietnam. We didn't really do the things about post-traumatic stress. We kind of identified it, but there wasn't really a thing. World War II, we called it,
shell shock,
or
battle fatigue,
whatever. But this is an identifiable issue, a problem that people need to be aware of. And it's with the thousands of troops coming back, we need to be proactive in trying to work with them so we can identify, issues that are going to come up. And we know they're going to come up.
And have them understand what is taking place within inside them. As you said, this has been documented earlier. Sophocles wrote 2 plays about the warrior not knowing how to handle his own home after coming home from battle. So this is something that's been around us forever. It's a human condition. So the work that you see here is Billy and I with some of the wounded warriors, and these are amazing guys. They're running in a race, and you can see that some of them have lost their legs, some have lost, some have invisible wounds. Not all wounds bleed, and. Tim Karcher is a lieutenant colonel in charge of Warrior Battalion now, Warrior Transition Unit Battalion. And Tim I met in the Center for the Intrepid in San Antonio, Texas. Amazing guy. He got hit in Iraq, an RPG, lost both legs. Amazing story about how they had to fight their way back to the field hospital to get him there. It's amazing that he's alive. But Timmy said this to me. He said, post-traumatic stress is like dieting. Some of us need to lose 5 to 10 pounds, some of us need to lose 10 to 20, and some of us are morbidly obese. And I said, Tim, what a great way to put a description of post-traumatic stress, that it's not something that we had a quantitative measure for. We're aware it takes place, but we can't quantify it. Yet this way, by using his visual, we can, and I've been 5 pounds overweight since I came out of the womb. I've been 10 to 20, I've been morbidly obese at times. So what I said to Tim is, by using your analogy, it's not about totally losing it all. It's learning how to manage and deal with it and work towards losing it. So if we do the same thing as we do with weight, trying to lose it, we do it with post-traumatic stress, we lose a little bit of a time. Over a journey of healing, we will get better.
And you can't do it all at once.
You cannot do it all at once.
And you can't do it by yourself.
And you can't expect your family members to be the peer-to-peer therapy. Your wife, your spouse, your husband. If you've been a woman that's in battle, you need to speak to other women who are in battle, other men that were in battle, because you experienced a similar experience. That spouse didn't experience that. To have that expectation on them is too much. And it's not going to be something that takes place. And we do a lot of education for the families as well.
And I think that's an important part of it because, husbands are coming back to wives and children. Right. Wives are coming back to things. And, it's a family thing. It has to be shared equally. Now, Bob, I want to take a few moments now, if I can, and I want to talk about this photo because this kind of identifies what you're doing and the outreach and the service that you're continuing to provide. Tell us about this gentleman.
Yeah, I was in D.C. Over Father's Day, and just walking around on Freedom Mall, I saw this hut that was put together, and I went up and started talking to this individual. His name is Frosty. He's a Vietnam vet, and Frosty has been there for probably about 3 months, and he's homeless. An amazing guy. Amazing stories, but this is the kind of outreach that I think is important, is that when you see someone, take some time, speak with them. You can see Frosty's got 2 books in his hand. By the 3rd day of me having conversation, then I brought the books to him. What I'm trying to help him is with understanding what I'm doing with post-traumatic stress, but it may be reflective of his, but he can also touch a lot of people.
Exactly.
So if we continue, but also this is indicative. This is Vietnam. This is 30-some years later.
Exactly.
Here's a homeless guy. This is a guy that served our country. We're going to have, and we have it right now from Iraq and Afghanistan.
Exactly.
We're going to have more and more homeless if we don't pay attention to what's taking place. Charles, there's only 1.1% of our society is serving us. That is the largest minority I've ever heard of. And there's never been a minority that's moved forward in our country without a hand up and a voice from the majority. We have to be their voice. We have to speak about and have a knowledge. The difference that I see today is in Vietnam, World War II, everyone had, and I say this reverently, a horse in the race.
Yep.
Everybody had a horse. Today, I think you can go through communities and people don't even know somebody that's serving in Iraq or Afghanistan. When you have your son or daughter serving there, you know what politicians are voting.
Yes.
You understand what's taking place.
And that's so critical.
A responsibility for all of us to understand how the men and women that serve us are being treated. Yeah. And we've got to find ways to be able to have, because what's happening is, unfortunately, Main Street Baghdad and Main Street Kandahar is becoming their normal.
Yes.
We have to get it so their normal is Main Street USA.
And that's a very good point. And, having, met with all the young people that you have, and they're the best and the brightest. They're there because they want to be there. They're there to serve their country. They're there for each other, and they're there for this country. And we have an obligation to try to do as much as we can, not only when we're there, but when they're back here. And they will be back here. And,
let me just share this quick story. When I first was in Iraq, the first day we were there, there was an explosion at 4:30 in the morning. I run out of the shoe, and the soldiers are standing outside, and they smile at me, and they said, "Sir, we're okay. It was close, but not that close." They know by the sound, but I'm new. I'm hyping. And then I had a conversation with them. Most powerful words I ever heard. This young soldier said to me, "Sir, we do our best soldiering when we're not afraid of dying." What a commitment they have to each other, a commitment to this country, a commitment to you and I. We need to have the same commitment to them.
Exactly. And, and Bob, I want to take a few moments to talk about your level of effort. You've been recognized from the highest echelons of this government and from the Army for your devotion to these troops. Not only, what you've done with being over there and the book and your efforts on that. And, you were, you went to Arlington Cemetery, the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, and you participated and we're going to show a little bit of that, because it's a very moving and it's a very moving ceremony, and it's indicative of the respect and the admiration for the work that you've done. And I want you to share with us this.
What you spoke of, Charles, may be one of the more rewarding. I don't know if that's the right word, but it was absolutely an honor to be part of. And when I was part of that wreath-laying ceremony at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, it was a powerful, powerful experience.
Present arms!
To go up to that tomb of the unknown soldier and lay a wreath may be it's a feeling that is so hard to describe because you know of the representation that has,
and all the people that have
all
been
the people that have been before.
And it's an absolute, and the pageantry of the troops that are there,
Yeah.
and the families that are there
Yep.
to do it. It's got to be a wonderful feeling, and to be asked and to be honored in that is a true recognition of the level of effort that you've done.
This is at the ceremony where you see Billy and myself, and we're with Lynn Chotsky and her husband, George, and all the way to the far right is Judy Coughlin, Tom Coughlin's wife. Tom had practice that day, so he couldn't be there right when we were doing this. But when he heard what we did, he was like so disappointed that he couldn't have been part of it. Yeah.
But share with us this Purple Heart.
The
Here we
Purple
are.
Heart was given to me at Fort Sill, and it was a Warrior Transition Unit. And I gave a presentation. I do the presentation on post-traumatic stress education and awareness. I spend time with the troops. And I'm used to getting handshakes, and they put a coin. It's very typical
Army
for the
coin, yeah.
Army coins, the challenge coins, to be handed over. Every unit has one. So when this soldier shook my hand, I thought that was what was in my hand. And when I looked down, it was his Purple Heart. And I said, I can't take this. He said, sir, I want you to have it because I have been able to figure out how to deal with the wound that everyone can see. Today, you helped me learn how to deal with the wound that no one can see. I tear up, he tears up, I give him a hug, and that's the kind of reward that by doing this kind of work that I get. And to have this, and obviously framed, and I hang it on my wall in my office.
That has got to be a
powerful,
tremendous honor. And and I would say to have a young man come to you and do that is got to be as rewarding as any NBA game or any NBA final. For somebody to recognize the level of devotion that you've given.
Yeah, no greater honor.
Now, Bob, obviously, your level of commitment doesn't stop here. It doesn't stop with this book. It doesn't stop with the next speech. There's things ahead for you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what are they? Where are you going next? What do you have on the horizon here? And as I mentioned in my opening remarks, I mean, any one of those careers is enough to fill up one lifetime, but you have a lot more to offer, and the message of and it is a message of hope that you want the not only firefighters and police officers but our troops as well. What's next? How do you continue this crusade?
Yeah, I'm figuring that out. I mean, the military, as I said, is using me more and more. And that was one of the reasons that I knew I had to end my NBA career, because I was getting requests to go and do this kind of work, and I couldn't do it because I had obligations to the National Basketball Association. I knew that I was going to retire by the time I was 62 at the latest, so a year or two earlier, but it frees me up to be able to go. So, like I said, I'm at a different military post or base almost every week. This week, I'll be going over to Orlando on Sunday and speaking at the Florida Firefighters Conference, and then I'll go right up to Fort Benning. I'll be there for 3 days, come home for a couple of days, then I go up to Alaska. I'm at Fort Wainwright, and then over to Fort Lewis in Seattle, and continue sharing this message of post-traumatic stress education awareness. My hope is to be back in Afghanistan soon, as well as throughout Europe. I've been to bases and posts in Europe, but there are other locations that we need to get to as well. So I see this as a mission. I see it as a way of life for me, and I think that this is the path that I'll be following. The commissioner has named me an MBA Cares Ambassador, so I represent the MBA on many times on these locations, and that's where I see my future. And right now, I'm figuring out where I'm going to land and what's going to be next.
Well, Bob, as someone who's been there at Landstuhl, who's when you see a wounded soldier sitting in a hospital, if you can bring them a moment of hope, a moment of sunshine into that, you know you're on the right path.
Right.
As you continue your travels, and this is a picture we want to share. This is General Odierno with you, presenting your award to you, and there's several others. There's too many to even try to get in here.
This was the second time that I was given the Army's Outstanding Civilian Service Medal. The first one was from General Cohn after the Fort Hood work, and then the Chief of Staff, General O, presented that to me for the ongoing work that's being done for the military.
And I would suggest, that as you continue this work, any opportunity that you would like to use, to kind of update, this community on the level of work and the scope of things that you're continuing to do, we'd be more than happy to do that. But the level of work that you've done as a young man, as a state trooper, the career as an NBA ref, and the respect and admiration that you've earned, in a way, kind of pale between what you've done here with reaching out to the young men and young women who desperately need someone to kind of identify and illuminate a huge issue, which is post-traumatic stress. And I can't think of a better person who can share that with and who can do that with such exuberance and excitement than you.
Thanks, Charles. Appreciate it.
Well, Bob, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for joining us on this very special edition of Up Close on METV. And for those of you who are interested, both Surviving the Shadows and Covert are going to be available, and you can order them, and we'll have that information on the screen. Thank you for joining us.